Hey everybody, Darren from the White Hatter, and we are stoked and excited to have everybody joining us today. Especially, it's day one of our social media safety and digital literacy for parents and caregivers. And we have parents, caregivers, adults, teachers, counselors who have joined in from around the world right now. We have over 230 participants across Canada, the United States, and a couple other countries from around the world, which is kind of cool. So a little bit about who we are and what we do. We're known as the White Hatters, obviously, because we wear these white fedoras. And our company is presently made up of current and retired law enforcement. We're made up of academics. So a good example, Brandon, who you're going to meet in a little bit, he's got his master's in the area of communications, specializing in social media. We have another person who works with us, Julia. She's working on her PhD right now in the area of privacy online as it pertains to schools. We also have coders who work with us, IT managers and specialists who work with us as well. And we consult with psychologists and psychiatrists in everything that we do. So we're very much an evidence-based program, as you will see in today's presentation. We're also white hat hackers, so we hack for good. We'll be talking about that over the next couple of days. And we are also a licensed online investigative team. We're one of the few companies, even in Canada, who are not only are we social media safety and digital literacy presenters and advocates, but we're also licensed online social media and investigators. Just this weekend, we helped another person deal with some issues that were happening online. And we're also made up of people who just love social media, as you will see over the next couple of days. Our company, we've been around now for about 26 years, and we have now presented to just over 490,000 teens from across Canada and the United States. And as of a month ago, we've now been involved in our 208th intervention of a teen who connected with us because of they or a friend of theirs were considering self-harm or suicide as an option because of cyberbullying or sexting gone wrong issues. They didn't know what to do, so they reached out to us for help, and we were able to help every one of them. We've now been recognized with 7 different recognitions and awards, some international, some national, a couple of provincial awards. And like I said, we are also a licensed security business here in the province of British Columbia. For the next 2 days, you've got 2 presenters, and here they are. They're the 2 of us, and there's Brandon right there. He's over on set number 2 right now. We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. And a little bit about myself. So I worked with the Victoria Police Department for about 30 years, and about 4 years ago, I finally did this. I finally retired, and I retired at the rank of a staff sergeant, also known as a watch commander. I held the same rank as a lieutenant within the Washington State Patrol. In the last couple of months, last couple of years in the police department, I became their open source intelligence social media investigator. So I specialize in the area of online investigations. In fact, I hold 7 specific certifications as an online investigator. I'm also a certified clinical hypnotherapist. Look into my eyes, all of you. And I also hold a master's designation in neuro-linguistic psychology, and we build a lot of that into all our programs to help build rapport and communications with our audiences. Brandon, he brings a master's degree in professional communications from Royal Roads University. He also has an undergraduate in sociology with a minor in technology, and he is also an open source intelligence trained online investigator. And in fact, he helps teach law enforcement, educators, and businesses across Canada and the United States on how to use the internet to conduct investigations. We as a family, we are the only family right now to have been awarded the Medal of Good Citizenship here in British Columbia for the work that we do with teens and families in the area of social media and digital literacy. Kind of cool. And Brandon has been involved with the company for about 12 years. When he first started, he helped us teach our kids' safety programs. But about 10 years ago, he pivoted into online and social media investigations. Obviously, he's a millennial. He was brought up in the world, and he recognized very, very quickly that there were things that needed to be done. In fact, what's really cool about the company is that we have now moved completely virtual. Although we still do in-school presentations, we suspect that's not going to happen for about another year. About 2 years ago, Brandon came up with the idea and said, you know what, Dad, we need to start moving to online virtual training. So 2 years ago, we built our first set, which is, I wish you were here because it looks like CNN news in front of us with all the cameras and the lights and the big monitors and stuff. And we had made plans to have a second set and to move slowly into doing virtual training. But COVID changed that. COVID caused us to pivot very quickly, and we did. We were well prepared for it. So we are now able to deliver live in classroom our multi-award winning programs that we offer to schools, businesses, parents groups, you name it, we do it. And it's more than just a Zoom event, as you will experience in today's presentation. Another really cool thing about moving virtually is that it now reduces costs, right? We're schools, we traveled across North America, Canada, the US, and unfortunately some schools couldn't afford the flights, the travel, the accommodations. Well, now we can present virtually anywhere in the world to any classroom, any home in the world, no matter what your platform. And right now our school programs deliver in schools is $350 plus GST, and we can host up to 200 students. So multi-classrooms, which is kind of cool. And you will see that we can deliver both into the home, into a classroom, or a combination of both at the same time. This studio allows us to do that. And again, all the credit goes to Brandon for the creativity he's done in creating what it is we're doing. We also use high definition video and broadcasting here at the White Hatter Studio. So this is not your traditional Zoom event that a lot of people will do online. It's high quality, high definition. We use industry leading hardware and software, as well as a lot of the audio and visual that you see going on to increase that experience. Because you know what? There's nothing better than being in person, for sure, in-person presentations, but this gets us really close, it really does. And we can also connect using any school's platform that they're using. So if a school doesn't want to use our platform and say they're using Zoom or Teams, we can integrate with any system that is out there and do it flawlessly. In fact, we've done that with a few schools already. A couple of programs that we are now moved virtually right now. Here's some right here, which is our leveraging program, where we're teaching high school students how to use social media to get that job or to get into a college or university, which is going to become a big deal post-COVID for sure. We're offering safety programs now for parents, elementary schools. Brandon is our elementary school presenter in the middle schools, and of course our high school programs where we can beam directly into high schools to share our information. Now, a couple of housekeeping rules before we get going. Throughout the entire presentation, if you have any questions to ask, you're going to be able to do that without any problems during the presentation. You'll notice on the bottom of your screen, the bottom right, there's this little box that says Ask Questions. You click on it, and then you ask your question, you record it, and then what Brandon is doing is he's collecting all those questions. And then at the end of each session that we're doing today, we're going to open it up to questions where we're going to answer them. And then we're also going to have an open question and answer platform at the very end. So if you ask a question, we will answer the question. If we don't know the answer, my promise to you is we will find somebody who knows the answer and we'll get back to you. So don't forget to go ahead and ask us those questions. So let's talk about the first topic we're going to talk about today. And it's back to school, right? Whatever that looks like where you're going, right? Some districts, you're required to go back to school. Some districts, they've decided not, they're still going to do everything online. There's other districts that are now doing hybrids, where they're doing both in classroom and at home. So there's no doubt that at home learning is still going to be there, right? For sure, for all of us to be using. And later in last school year, we were kind of moved into this emergency online learning modality, as I like to call it, right? And there were a lot of lessons learned. And so one of the things that we've done is we've listened to teachers, we've listened to parents, and we've listened, very importantly, to teens about their experiences. And as a result of that, we've decided to create this White Hatter checklist. And by the way, everything that we're sharing with you in today's event, as well as the other 3 days, they will be online for the next 7 days for you to replay, right? Anytime you want, as many times as you want for the next 7 days. But today we just released on our webpage. Our webpage is www.thewhitehatter.ca. We just released our newest article, which is a checklist for being prepared to head back to school, especially when it comes to online learning. And that's what this first segment is all about. And one of the most important things is about getting our home networks ready to make sure that they're secure, they're safe, and they're private. So we stop any issues from getting into our home into our networks and doing some really negative things in our networks. So here we go. So the first thing wherever possible. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, depending upon the school district you live in and the economics of your school districts, this could be a challenge for sure. But wherever possible, when it comes to online learning, we want you to use school-provided devices wherever possible. And Brandon, why is that preferred?
Yeah, you bet. Well, school-provided devices we find are the best solution for schools on managing virtual classroom engagement. This is the same thing we teach businesses for when they have remote workers, which is pretty predominant nowadays, where basically if a school has their own devices they hand out to students, the school can then control what software, what hardware, what filtering, what monitoring is put on that device. Because we've seen over the past 6 months where schools have had issues with students with different software programs, Mac, PCs, Linux, Chromebooks, right? It can get pretty complicated. So we always recommend if you work for a school district or you have influence with your school district, we highly recommend that schools have their own devices they give to students. And therefore what schools do on those devices, there's no real issue for privacy and security when students are using their own personal devices. But again, I mean, that's based off of if a school has the resources to do that. But best case scenario, school provided devices is ideal. Back to you, Darren.
Thanks, Brandon. Oh, love that new set. I love that new set. And obviously, if you're getting a school device, it's very important that you as a parent, not just your child, but you as the parent learn how to use that device. If you've never used a Chromebook before, that may be a little different than the PC that you're using now. So it's important that both you and the child understand how that device works. And it's not as hard as you think, and YouTube can be your friend. The next one is let's ensure that whatever device you're using, a school device or your own personal device, that you're making sure then when it's not in use that you're locking it. And again, Brandon, why is that important?
Of course. Well, basically people tend to think device locks are only for if you're mobile. For example, you lose your phone, you lose your laptop, that kind of thing, or people can't get access. But device locks are really important for even in the house because there are some cyber attacks out there that cyber criminals will use, black hat hackers will use in order to access your device remotely. And what they will try to do is guess the password to your account. For example, if they got a virus in your computer, they'll try all kinds of different passwords. So even having a password on your device, and we'll talk about good passwords here in a bit later on the show, but basically having passwords on your device is a must, even within the house, even when isolated. Back to you, Darren.
Yeah, really important. It's also important, let's say you're away from home, you and your family have decided to go for a walk to get away from the home during COVID, just to get out some exercise, and all of a sudden somebody breaks in your home and grabs your devices, right? Especially if it's a school device that may be full of other private and personal information. By having these things locked, it prevents that from happening. Next thing that we want you to do is we want you to secure your home router. And I think what's really important to understand about home routers is that home routers are basically access into your home of all the other devices that you own that connect to the internet. So Brandon, why is securing your router so important?
Well, routers come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Here's an old router I have here we used long ago. But basically routers, they're your access point into your home network. They have these little ports in the back. They have maybe an antenna, maybe not. Basically remember that these devices are just like computers. Sometimes they need updates, and making sure your wireless network is secure, having a password on your Wi-Fi. So before someone gets onto your Wi-Fi, there needs to be a password. Now, most new routers, when you buy and set them up, by default walk you through how to set up a password. Older routers may not have that functionality, and even older routers may have poor wireless connections or issues that just haven't been fixed. So investigate your router to make sure that it is sufficient for your family, having a password, making sure all the updates are updated, and if need be, maybe even upgrading to a router. These are actually pretty cheap, and most internet service providers, the companies you hire to give you internet access, will actually give you routers for free with your connection. So check your local listings for if you might get a free upgrade, which would be kind of cool. Back to you, Darren.
And Brandon, isn't it true that sometimes you got to be careful about how you're maybe changing some settings in your router? Like, isn't that true to a degree?
To a degree. Most routers, they have these built-in wizards that will walk you through step by step on how to secure your network pretty easily. And this is important because, you know, you wouldn't want someone like your neighbor, for example, hopping onto your Wi-Fi network and doing who knows what. And that just bogs down your speed, especially when you have families who are working remotely and now learning remotely. So passwords, routers, really important. And again, we'll talk about passwords here in a bit.
Yeah, and you know what? There are some companies now. We're looking at one very closely right now. They're called Griffin. Right now, they're available. It's in the United States. You can get it on Amazon right now as well to get shipped up into Canada. But it is a very powerful router. But not only is it a router, but it is also a filter. It's got malware protection built right into it, and it also has parental monitoring software in it as well. And it's a product that we're looking very closely at, and that what we are likely going to recommend as a company as well. Next one, there is no better time than to update all your passwords. Now that school is starting, I think it is so important that teens now start to update and create brand new username and passwords. And Brandon, what are some important things to remember when it comes to creating passwords and usernames?
Good old passwords. You've probably all heard this. Those of you who are watching, you've probably all heard this. Make sure your passwords are about, at minimum, 6 digits in length, making sure you have a mix of capital, lowercase, symbols, and some kind of numbers. And also make sure that all your accounts have different passwords. I mean, that's the number one way hackers will try to hack people. They guess one password correctly, they'll try the same password on all your accounts. So having those basics are really important. And a long password doesn't necessarily mean it is a secure password. Back to you, Darren.
Yeah, good point. In fact, one technique that I teach at the high schools, when I'm in high schools teaching high school students to pick a really good secure password, is pick a phrase that you're going to remember. I'm going to use the White Hatter. You could use Mary Had a Little Lamb. Pick something that means something to you that you're never going to forget, but make sure it has at least 6 letters in it. Then what I want you to do is I want you to capitalize the first letter in each one of those words. Once you've done that, take the entire phrase and shrink it so it's one big word, so it looks just like that. Then what I want you to do is replace any letter E's with the number 3 and any letter A's with the @ symbol so it looks just like that. And then the last thing I want you to do is add an exclamation point at the end of it. Notice how it uses capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, much like Brandon just shared with you. But more importantly, after you create once you've created a password, to check if it's a really good one and make sure it's really secured, is to use something that is called My Login. And Brandon, maybe you can demonstrate this for the group.
You bet. So this is My Login. They're like a password company, and they provide this neat little tool here that you can kind of test different password strengths. For example, if some bad hacker got access to your computer somehow, how long would it take them trying to get access and crack your passwords? So here's an example I brought up here. A password. It's a pretty long password, the White Hatter. Obviously, not a really good password. You can see, based on their analytics here, it takes about 2.2 minutes. Or even if I were to use the worst password, for example, password. The worst password. It's the first thing anyone guesses, right? So obviously, not a good password. Even if I do password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, again, it's longer, doesn't necessarily mean it's a good password. Here's an example of a good password. It doesn't have to be long. We recommend at minimum 6 digits. But even though, here's an example. TWH with a capital T, hashtag 2020. Why not? Well, you can see here, this password's actually quite stronger. Adding a couple more characters could be AUG for August. Look, now it says 85 centuries for some bad actor to hack into my device if they had access to it. So again, having great passwords, they don't need to be super long, but they need to be complex just enough that it makes it hard for a person or even a computer system to guess. Back to you, Darren.
Some good points there, Brandon. But you know, one of the issues we consistently hear from parents and teens is because we recommend different passwords for every network or app that you're using. It's hard to remember those. So one of the better ones out there is LastPass. And Brandon, can you maybe talk a little bit about what LastPass is and how it works?
You bet. Well, actually, I use LastPass myself, and it's a great mobile tool that stores all your passwords in a single secure place. Because we recommend for people to never, ever put your passwords in your note apps on your phone. Terrible place to put your passwords. They're unsecured, unencrypted, oftentimes shared among different computers. With a tool like LastPass, what it does is it can be an app. You can go on your phone, you can access it through the web on your laptop, and you type in, you create a special master password, which is the most secure password you will ever have, and you remember that one password. And you use LastPass as a password manager, where you put all your passwords to, say, your Google account, maybe your Facebook, Instagram, all your account information goes in this secured vault type environment that you access using your master password. Doing this allows you to easily access all your accounts and making sure that all your accounts have different passwords. Now, me being the security conscious person I am, obviously my most important accounts, like my email, my bank account, like those most important accounts are always up here. They never leave up here. But other accounts like my games, my social networks, I store in LastPass. Just make sure you remember your master password. But if you can do that, you have access to all your stuff.
Now, Brandon, what about Apple products where they have the password keychain that they're using? What about those? Are they pretty secure?
Oh yeah, those work great as well. The thing with the Apple keychain though is that it's only good for Apple devices. So if you're someone who has a Mac and a PC and that kind of stuff, it can be difficult to get access to that if you're on a different platform, because Apple likes to keep things in their own particular ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So using a third-party multi-platform app like LastPass is what I prefer, because it allows me to access my information on various different devices, because as a white hatter, I have a lot of devices.
There you go. Next one is you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself from viruses and malware. So we want to enable malware protection. And we as a company, we use a product called Bitdefender. And I'll be very honest, Brandon has been using Bitdefender for a while. I was using another fairly well-known product. And he convinced me to go with Bitdefender. Once I put Bitdefender on my computer, and I'm a Mac guy, and once I put it on my Mac, it was actually picking up on stuff. This other product that I bought that was specifically for Macs wasn't picking up. So again, this should be going on to all your devices. And for people who own Apple products, a lot of people who still own Apples think, well, I don't have to worry about this stuff because I have an Apple. Well, you know what? Apples are under just as heavy attack right now as PCs. So you need to protect all your devices wherever possible. You don't really have to worry about the iPhones and the iPads. They're fairly sandbox, fairly secure. But for PCs, make sure a lot of the ones that are issued by schools already have some form of malware built into it. The next one is for those of you who are, not only are kids at home right now, but so are us adults who are working from home because we have our own businesses or we're working for a business from home, and making sure that it's secure is important. One of the things we quickly want to mention to those parents is to think about cyber insurance. And Brandon, can you just talk a little bit more about this topic?
Of course. Definitely more so for businesses, for those of you who are working professionals. This is more so up your alley. Basically, if you suffer a cyber attack, some hacker hacks in, steals data, messes with your data, basically what cyber insurance does, it basically pays for the fees to get your data back. Now, caveat here, please read your policy carefully, because we've seen a lot of companies and working professionals that have purchased cyber insurance and they didn't get payouts, because quite often on these plans they have this little stipulation that says you must enable at least the bare minimum security practices, because if you're hacked and you've done nothing to secure your devices or accounts, well, we're not going to do anything about it. So definitely be careful when you purchase these things. Read the fine print, but if you're doing the basics and having things secure and you're doing good behavior online, chances are it's a good potential policy to look into.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we as a company carry it right now for a whole variety of different reasons. So we just kind of covered how to protect your network, how to protect your computers, how to make it more secure. But now let's talk about how do we make the home environment more conducive to online learning. And like I said, we learned a lot in the last part of the school year, and we listened closely to teachers and parents and teens themselves. So some of the things we're going to talk about now is how do we increase privacy in the home when our kids are learning online? How do we make it easier for them at home? Because this is different for a lot of them, right? How do we avoid interruptions, which is one of the killers, in our opinion, of what online good learning should be about in a home environment? And how do we prevent connection issues to make sure that as we're connecting with our teachers to learn online, that we don't lose those connections? Those are some of the things we're going to be talking about. So the first and most important thing we want you to do is before you start any session is to reboot the computer and make sure other programs, application, and tabs are closed. And Brandon, why is that so important from a variety of different reasons, right?
Well, use us for example, as professional educators who I guess used to travel all over the world. Anytime we would do a presentation, we would do a clear system reboot, and we've seen sometimes funny examples, usually embarrassing examples over the last 6 months, where someone was doing something virtually in a business meeting or a school meeting virtually using their camera, sharing their screen, and they realized that there was some kind of sound on a video in the background they didn't realize was open that was playing and being shared. So for us, same practice we use when we present, do a clear system reboot, and of a benefit, doing that can usually stop any unwanted processes that are eating up your system resources, which can then speed up your device, speed up your internet connection, and just all around having a better online learning experience. Doing reboots, really important before you start class.
And when you say reboot, what do you mean, Brandon?
Basically, you go into your system, the little button icon, that's the little power icon, you click that, press restart, or just do a quick shutdown. Each way works just fine.
Yeah, next one is before using any conferencing platform that your school may be using, Zooms, Blue Jeans, Teams, Skype, whatever one they're using, make sure you and your child know how they work. So use them beforehand. And trust me, you're not going to break them, right? So people are so afraid if I go in and do something wrong, I'm going to mess it up, I'm going to break it. You're not going to break it. You're not going to do anything wrong. So get in there and play with each program. Most of them, all of them are very similar in how they operate, right? How you turn on and off your camera and do all that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important that you and your child learn how these platforms are used and how they work. And it's not as hard as you think. So take that time to play with these platforms before you start the school season. Next one, teach your child how to turn off the camera and the mic. This one is extremely important, right? Because there may be times during the session where your child needs to go to the bathroom, something embarrassing is happening in front of the camera, and they need to turn it off. So it is important that you teach them how to do that. Again, a lot of these platforms, Zoom, Blue Jeans, Teams, they have a button right there. As soon as you click on it, it turns the camera and the mic off, which is really, really, really important. I mean, there was one incident, it became quite famous during COVID teaching last school year, where a child took their laptop into the bathroom with them, not knowing that they didn't turn the camera off at the same time. I kid you not, that happened, right? So again, it is important that we teach our kids how to do that. Next one. Do not allow online learning to take place in your child's bedroom or bathroom wherever possible. Bedrooms, we're going to talk about this with sleep issues. I think it's on day 3 around technology, but bedrooms should be used for sleeping. However, because of COVID and what's going on with some homes and the size of homes, the bedroom may be the only alternative you have. So if the bedroom is going to be used for online learning, what we want you to do is we want you to put a portable table into the bedroom where the laptop goes onto the table so it's facing the open door. So the door of the bedroom is open. The laptop is on top of the table facing outside so that when your child is sitting in front of the computer, you see your child's back, but you can see and hear everything that's going on that computer. Once the session is over and they're finished their online learning, then the technology comes out of that bedroom. Really, really, really important to think about. Next one. You want to make sure that you pick a place in the home where the backdrop is a wall and not into your open home, and make sure the background is neutral and doesn't show any kind of personal or private information such as pictures or where you live. This is really, really important. Another story that became famous online where a child was doing online learning, and then all of a sudden in the background there's mom doing housework in her pajamas, not knowing that she was being videoed at the same time. But there's other reasons as well. And Brandon, maybe you can talk about this one.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a couple stories in the last 6 months in regards to some issues with privacy, security, and the complexities of bringing the classroom virtually into a private household. A good example was this story down in the States earlier this year, talking about how some educators were struggling with their responsibility to report potentially dangerous activity. Example here, there was a student doing online classes. They had their camera on their laptop in the bedroom, and on the background, the student collected Nerf blasters, which is a pretty common thing for students nowadays, for young people. And the educator felt uncomfortable in the situation, so they called local police to investigate because they couldn't confirm if this was a real gun or a fake gun. So these are some of the challenges that educators and even household members are dealing with in terms of how you position your camera, what's in the background, and what are the challenges with privacy when you're working professionally and learning in the household. So just things to think about. Always look at the background. Really important.
Again, for those who are joining us right now, who just hopped on, don't forget during the session you can ask us questions throughout the entire presentation. You just go to the lower screen, you'll see a box there. It says Ask Questions. Click on it. Fill in your question. Brandon is collecting them, and then after this segment, we will answer all the questions. And even better, at the end of the presentation, any questions that we haven't answered, we're going to open up to Q&A at the very end. Ask any questions on anything that we covered in today's event. Again, don't forget that in today's event, everything that we're doing, you'll have full access for the next 7 days, right? Free access because you've signed up. Next one. If you're working from home, it may be difficult to share a space with your child. So think about alternative ways that it could work for you. For example, could you work out of your child's bedroom while they have the home office, or you have the home office and living room, right? Like, so you can get fairly creative, right? Sit down, brainstorm with your child, because we really want them to have a space that is going to be dedicated to where they're going to be doing their online learning. Next one. This one we heard loud and clear from teachers and parents. Even the kids said this. If there's one thing that COVID has proven to us is how important school is when it comes to structure in our child's lives. Like, let's think about this. You get up a certain time, you catch your bus or you walk to school, you get to school, first class starts here, here's recess. It's all planned out. Well, being at home and learning, it has thrown it all out. So one of the best things we can do now is to create a balanced visual timetable where you use pictures of each activity as well as or instead of words can be really helpful to establish routine. And that schedule, I would recommend that you post it up every day on your child's bedroom door and also on the fridge in your kitchen. So that every day when the kids get up, they can see exactly, okay, these are the times where I'm going to be learning. These are the times where I can do what I want and play around and have a good time. Here's my lunch. Here's my recess. Here's my water break. Here's my bend and stretch. It's all planned out. It creates that structure, which is really important. Next one. Wherever possible, ensure that you use a hardwired connection when you're doing online learning rather than Wi-Fi. Brandon, why is that kind of preferred?
Yeah. I brought back the router. Oh, I love the props. So, hardwired connections. So you have your router. Hardwired connections, what we mean by that is you use the hardwire cable, what's known as the Ethernet cable, that plugs into the back ports here of your router. And then you plug this end into your computer or your laptop. Now, obviously, depending on your household and how it's laid out, you may not want to be drilling holes to wire this stuff up. So maybe your only solution is wireless. But if at all possible, if you can hardwire in, this will give you the strongest, most secure connection to your internet service provider and to use web hosting for your Zoom calls or whatever video calls you might be using. Another interesting tool that's on the market that we've used here in the past in the studio is these little devices. This is called Power over Ethernet, and you can see it has the same cable used for that router. But on this end is the power connection you find in a wall plug. So what these little devices are, and this one's made by D-Link, is you plug this end into the wall of your house and you plug it into the back of your router. So that's your hardwired connection. And the other device you plug into your laptop or your computer. And that gives you a wired internet-based connection through your power lines. I don't even know how that works. All I know, it's cool. We've used it here in the studio, and it works pretty awesome. So, I mean, if you don't want to start drilling holes and feeding wires through, Power over Ethernet might be a really good solution to get some secure and some stable network connections to your devices. Back to you, Darren.
Ah, good point. Now, Brandon, what about kitchens as a place if you're using Wi-Fi? Why is that not necessarily preferred?
You're talking about the microwave.
Okay, yeah.
Microwaves? Why talk? So basically, I guess the radiation, I guess we'll call it, from microwaves, the wireless signals that kind of emit from microwaves when you turn them on, it's actually the same wavelength used for Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Go figure. So people, say if you were to bring your laptop and sit on top of your microwave and turn it on and you connect wirelessly to your router, you're probably going to come across some interruptions. So if you're doing an important video call, staying as far away from your microwave when it's running might be a good idea, just because you don't want any kind of drops. So again, that wired connection would prevent that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny actually. I had one family saying, "Yeah, every time we use it in the kitchen right now, we have problems." They said, "Do you have a microwave in the kitchen?" And I said, "Do you happen to microwave popcorn while you're doing it?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "That's the reason why." Like, a lot of people don't know that, right?
Well, additionally, if you live in a neighborhood that has a lot of Wi-Fi networks, if you're in a very compact place and all your neighbors, like 5 floors up, are all using Wi-Fi, well, if everyone's using the same channel of Wi-Fi, it's going to bog you down as well. Go figure. So again, a wired connection, where at all possible, is going to be the best option to give you the fastest, most secure, and stable connection to your internet.
Good point. Next one. Make sure that you identify a space that is well lit, has reliable power source, and is comfortable and can provide peace and quiet to reduce distractions to promote learning. You know, I've learned a lot from Brandon about lighting and how important lighting is when it comes to production things, but also with respect to the comfort of the eyes, so that the eyes aren't constantly being strained, reduces headaches. So you want to pick a space. You know, if you can get a lot of daylight coming in, great. If not, then you want other light in there. Light is your friend when it comes to this topic. Next one. Let's ensure that any non-tech equipment, such as notebooks, paper, pencils, are within arm's reach, just in case they are needed, right? Again, you want everything really close by, so it prevents the student, from getting up and leaving the camera. Because as soon as they do that, the other students notice that, the teachers are noticing, they're going, "Hey, what's going on there?" So having all this stuff, including juice or drinks or water close by, so that they don't have to remove themselves during the session, other than maybe to use the bathroom, at which time they turn off the camera. Again, teach them how to do that. Next one. Make sure any mobile devices that you're going to be using are fully charged, and if they can't be plugged in, right? Like, there is nothing worse than sitting down to do an in-classroom learning session. You get halfway through and then boom, all of a sudden the computer dies because dad was playing World of Tanks, that's what I play, and is eating up half of the battery power, and nobody knew any better. So again, if you can't plug it in, which is always preferred, right? Plugging it in so you have a constant power source. Make sure that the batteries are always charged and ready to go on whatever device you're going to use for that in-home learning session. Next one. You know what? If cell phones aren't required during the learning process, get them out of the room or the space which is going to be used for online learning. Like it or not, cell phones can be very distracting to everybody. The exception to the rule is if the teacher says, well, we're going to use our cell phones during this session. Okay, that makes total sense. But other than that, get the phone out of the learning environment. The kids can get to it after the learning environment is done, then they can get back to their phones. They become very distracting. Next one. Let's make sure they're wearing proper clothing when they're sitting down, much like they would do. Like when your kids go to school, they wear school type clothing. They don't wear pajamas, although sometimes they have pajama days. That's the exception to the rule, obviously. But I mean, during COVID, it was interesting to see not only students, but how many adults were sitting down to do on-class learning or online learning or job stuff, and all of a sudden they step out and they forgot that they were still, although they had a shirt and tie on, they were actually still in their underwear. And by the way, I'm wearing pants right now. I'm not wearing underwear, so just to let you guys know that. But you know, you want to make sure, you want to keep things as the same as possible, right? So when they're doing their at-home learning online, make sure they're wearing the same type of clothes as they would wear if they were going to school. Exception to the rule, some of the classrooms I saw it, some of the teachers were going, hey, we're gonna have a pajama day today. Well, great, pre-planned, good to go, right? But other than that, let's make sure they're wearing appropriate clothing when they're doing online learning. Next one, this is especially important for parents. Don't hover over your child while they're doing their online learning. Don't do it, right? Like, come on, let's be reasonable here, right? Like, when you send your kids to school, do you walk into the classroom with them and stand behind them during the entire class, in-class school, brick and mortar, and look and see what? No, we don't. Well, same thing goes with at-home learning, right? Once they're set up, let them be. You know, if they need your help, they'll let you know. At that point in time, you come in and help them, right? So again, let's not hover over our kids. Next one. Use online tools responsibly, right? You know, privacy is likely not a thing. Teachers often have admin access and classmates can record what they see. And Brandon, maybe you can speak a little bit more to this issue.
Yeah, totally. And again, seeing these stories in the past 6 months, when people were starting to learn from home, especially at the high schools and college levels, not so much elementary, but I'll still speak to it. There were some online learners who thought in the online platforms they were using, Zoom, for example, has a feature where you can actually communicate and talk with people who are your classmates in kind of like what appears to be a private environment. But what students didn't realize was actually after the class finished, the teacher could see all the private communications that were happening. And some students got in some serious trouble because they thought what they were doing was private in their online learning environment, whispering or sending private messages to other students, when in fact wasn't true. And good example is Zoom again. Zoom has had a whole list of security issues and privacy issues since this whole event started. Now, thankfully, like most of these things have all been fixed now, which is fantastic. But I mean, Zoom is a really popular platform. And if you use Zoom, it's pretty secure right now. But who knows what some hacker, some security researcher might discover next week, next month, next year that may reveal what used to be private information that is now public because of some flaw in the code that Zoom didn't foresee. So again, it's what we see everywhere. Think about everything you do online is public, permanent, searchable, and sometimes even then exploitable. Back to you, Darren.
Oh, you stole a little bit of my thunder there. You're reading ahead a little bit, right? Because we constantly should be reminding our kids that although they may be in private learning environment, everything they're doing online is public, it's permanent, it's searchable, exploitable, copyable, shareable, and sometimes it's all for sale. Nothing is ever private. And it is so important that our kids and even adults understand that rule. Next one, remember, there will be some digital hiccups, especially with younger students. This is where you will play an important role to help where necessary. Remember what I said earlier, don't hover, but if your child is having some issues, that's when you come in to help. And that's why understanding the technology, how the computer works, if it's not yours, and understanding how these platforms work. Maybe they lost their Wi-Fi and now they need to reconnect. They don't know how to do that unless you've showed them. And even then, maybe you're there to help them reconnect, right? But there's going to be some hiccups. and expect that, and that's why you're there as the parent to support if needed. Next one, we encourage the 20-20-20 rule. The 20-20-20 rule actually came from the American Association of Ophthalmologists, and here's what they say. For every 20 minutes you're online, take a 20-second break and pick an object that's about 20 meters away, a couple or 10 feet away for our American watchers, and focus on it for 20 seconds and blink for the 20 seconds. And get up and stretch at the same time so you're getting a little active, so you're not sitting down all the time. You will be amazed at how much that reduces eye strain, eye dryness associated with watching and seeing what's going on online. It's something that I've been following for the past year thanks to my ophthalmologist, and I'm telling you, it made all the difference in the world. So try it. You'll be amazed. Even the adults right now, every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break, pick something that's 20 meters away, focus on it, blink for 20 seconds, and poof, you're good to go. Last one. Implement our family collective agreement. You're going to be able to go onto our website, which is www.thewhitehatter.ca, go to resources tab, scroll down, find parents, click on parents. As soon as you click on the parents, you're going to find all our parents information there for free. And one of it is the Family Collective Agreement. And the Family Collective Agreement is a 5-page document that clearly outlines expectations on the use of technology, both inside and outside of the classroom. And I want you to sit down. I want you to even left some space that if you want to add your own family stuff in there, you can do it, right? Sit down, read it together, make sure your child understands it, have them repeat back to you what they say and ask them what does this mean so you know that they understand it. And then you both sign it and again, put that on the fridge because I want it constantly to be there to constantly remind your child about what expectations and what is acceptable and not acceptable behavior. And if they go to say, well, I didn't know, you can, yeah, you did, because here it is right here, it's on the fridge. So remember this, make the most of the space you have, but don't get stressed if you can't provide the perfect learning environment. If need be, your child can work on the sofa or on the bedroom floor. It was amazing to see how many parents were able to adapt, overcome, and improvise during the late last school year to make this work. There was no doubts that there were a lot of lessons learned for sure. And so we learned from them. We listened to teachers, we listened to parents, we listened to the teens themselves, and that's where we came up with this checklist. Again, we just released an article on this. It's on our website, on our blog. You'll see it on the front page, on the bottom of the page. Click on it, you'll go right to the article, and it's got everything we just spoke about there in bullet point form, so you can print it off and check it off just to remind you, and you'll be able to watch this video for the next 7 days. So let's talk about questions, right? During the session, there are a number of questions that came in. So let's have a look at some of the questions. So the first one, hi there, can I get the recording about information on this? Yeah, you know what? Our recording, what you're watching right now, will be of everybody who signed up, which you're one of them. You'll be able to access that for the next 7 days, 24/7, every single day for the next 7 days, right? So you'll be able to play it, watch it, write down information. A lot of what we're talking about today is found on the blog article we just wrote as well that you can see on our webpage. So you just go there, click on the article, it's right there. And if you go to our blog, Brandon and I have written over 150 articles. And a lot of what we talk about is located in those articles. It's all free, costs you nothing. We also have a YouTube channel where we do a lot of YouTube interviews of other experts in the field, and we do a weekly show. Check that out, just a ton of information, free for you. Next question, Brandon. For the passwords, what about keeping them as pre-recorded on my browser? Brandon, I'm going to have you answer that one.
Great question. We recommend against that. Some browsers in the past have had issues with storing passwords in an unsecured place within the browser. So some browsers in the past have saved passwords. So for example, when you go to a website, say your email, you go to Facebook, you go to Instagram, you go to a website, you type in your username, type in your password, your browser may pop up with a question saying, hey, do you want the browser to remember your login information for next time? We recommend against that because we'd rather you prefer use a password manager like LastPass, which does come with browser extensions that you can install on your browser and works the exact same way. That is a much more secure environment because some browsers, what they've done, they've stored those passwords in plain, clear text, easy to find Word files on your computer. Don't want that. Password managers like LastPass, there's an add-on for your browser, does the same thing, and that's what we recommend. Back to you, Dan.
Excellent, excellent advice. Next question. How secure is the fingerprint as a password? Called biometrics. I use it. I use my face with my iPhone. I use that as well. Fairly secure, fairly encrypted. Here's a story though. I was at home sleeping in my sleepy chair, and at that time I had an iPhone that used the fingerprint. And Beth didn't know, my wife didn't know my password into my phone. So I'm sleeping in my chair. She didn't want to wake me, so she actually lifted my thumb without me knowing, put the thumb over on the thumb ring, boop, and boop, she was in. Away she went to the races, right? So, but other than that, biometrics are fairly secure. We use them. Brandon, do you have any other comments on that?
I would always prefer using the Face ID instead. Avoiding fingerprint IDs is my recommendation because basically, in your example, for example, certain legal issues as well we find with fingerprint IDs. Not saying that people can crack them, it's just some legal issues dealing with law enforcement, that kind of stuff. If you're using a Face ID system, most systems require you to have your eyes open when you look at your phone, which means you're active and you are paying attention to what's happening. Of course, unless you're a heavy sleeper like me and you like open your eye and take a scan. But for me, it's hard to crack. Fingerprints, I would prefer avoiding them. Face ID, all good with me.
But what about youth who don't have a phone that offers facial ID?
Fingerprints will work just fine, but having a password, like we talked about before,
Yeah.
on your device is always the best case solution.
Right.
Keep the password up here, keep it secure, keep it remembered.
Yeah. Next question. What is the best way to contact you about collaborating? Great question. Best way to do that is via email, which is contact@thewhitehatter.ca, or you can call us toll free at 1-855-478-9119. Again, toll free, 1-855-478-9119, and we'll take your call or just connect with us over email, and then we can work from there. Some great questions. So,